Let's stay on the vaccine and how we get back to life as normal now and look at the travel industry. And airlines around the world are looking at a digital medical passport, effectively, where when you go to book a flight, you have a digital medical record there to see whether they want you on board. Let's find out more about that from James Goodwin, who's the CEO of the Australian Airports Association. Thanks for joining us, James. Effectively, what would this digital passport tell an airline about my health record?
Yeah, afternoon, Chris, and thanks for the interest. Look, the aviation sector has certainly been doing it tough during this period, so it's really encouraging that we're now talking about getting back on track and starting to fly again. Look, the important message here is that we need to track. We need to track who's had the vaccine, who can enter a country, who can't, who is fit to travel. So that's the important thing that we need to look at. Airlines play an important role in carrying the passengers to Australia, from Australia. But importantly, it's the government that really needs to recognise and understand how they're going to trace and track who has had that vaccine or not. So airlines have their role to play, but it's really the government authorities who are going to determine who can enter the country or who can leave a country. So we really encourage the governments to start thinking about this and working together so that we can get some of those travel bubbles going. That's really the only way that we're going to be able to get our economy back on track. And we know that with the vaccine rollout, there's going to be a phased approach to this, that as the vaccine phases go on, then certainly we should look at lifting some of those restrictions, both the domestic restrictions and then the international restrictions when it's safe to do so.
Well, surely domestically, though,
an important role.
Surely domestically, though, when we have a vaccine rollout and we get to a pretty broad rollout of that vaccine, and certainly all the vulnerable people are protected, surely we should be able to fly around this country without proving to any airline whether or not we've been vaccinated. That's a personal choice.
Absolutely. So we want to really remove all of those domestic border restrictions. We should be able to, unless there is a particular hotspot and a particular reason to do so, we really should be able to get around as we need. It's the only way the economy is going to start getting back to any sort of normality. But we know that we do need to start looking and prioritising, when it's safe to do so, the international travel. Because that's really the only way that the aviation sector and the broader Australian economy is going to be getting back on track. So as the vaccine rolls out, we should start to see, and Australians should start to expect, that some of those restrictions will start to ease.
Yeah, but the concern would be that anybody's prevented from travelling because they haven't had a vaccine.
Yeah, so we know that we need to look at a way of tracking and understanding who's had that vaccine or not, or which of the vaccines that we might trust. Airlines play their role, airports play their role, but it's really governments that are going to determine who can travel.
Yeah, but we don't do this on other diseases. We don't do this with other diseases.
There are some other diseases like, yellow fever and so on. There are yellow fever cards for incoming passengers and things like that. But there's a managed system and it affects very few people. So we have a system in place. We should use those existing mechanisms that we have in place just to understand who's safe to enter that country, who's safe to leave a country. Let's start working with some of those countries that haven't had cases of COVID in the last, say, 30 days or so. Let's start working with them Indeed. To make sure that we can start getting our economy back together and that we can get our life back together.
Spot on. Thanks for joining us, James.
Thanks, Chris.
James Goodwin there from the Australian Airports Association.